The psychology of people who laugh at everything. You know that person who laughs at absolutely everything. The one who can find humor in moments that would send most people into an emotional tailspin. Someone cuts them off in traffic. No road rage. No meltdown. Instead, they shrug. Maybe even laugh. Not because they don't care, but because they've already mentally traveled places most people haven't. They wonder, is that driver having the worst day of their life? Are they exhausted? Heartbroken? Barely holding it together? Because when you've survived real storms, everyday inconveniences don't register the same way. And here's the truth most people miss. That kind of humor isn't naivete. It's adaptation. A brain that wasn't broken. It was trained people who've endured prolonged stress, trauma, or emotional instability don't just move on. Their nervous system rewires. Neuroscience backs this up. Repeated exposure to uncertainty forces the brain to become faster, sharper, and more predictive. These minds don't operate on default settings anymore. They're calibrated for survival. Not broken, not damaged, trained to read micro-expressions, trained to sense mood shifts before words change, trained to scan environments automatically, exits, tone, energy, risk. That's why they often appear calm in chaos. They've already lived there. Why chaos doesn't destroy them anymore. Here's something nobody tells you. People who've been through too much don't become immune to pain. They become immune to being destroyed by it. They learned early that pain is survivable. That heartbreak doesn't equal death. That loss doesn't end existence. That fear peaks and then passes. So when life throws curveballs, their system doesn't panic. It adapts. Survival isn't a question anymore. It's a given. The empathy paradox. You'd expect someone forged by hardship to be cynical, closed off, bitter. But often, the opposite happens. They become intensely empathetic, almost uncomfortably so. They don't just hear words, they hear what's behind them. They notice the forced smile, the delayed response, the energy that doesn't match the sentence. Because pain has a language, and they're fluent. Most people walk into a room and see furniture. They walk in and feel emotional temperature. They don't read silence as empty. They read its texture. Heavy, tense, exhausted, disconnected. And without making it awkward, they'll remember to check on you later. Quietly, gently, because they know how much it matters. Post-traumatic growth is real psychologist. Richard Tedeschi coined the term post-traumatic growth, and research supports it. Roughly 50 to 66% of people who experience significant trauma don't just return to baseline. They grow beyond it. Their priorities sharpen. Their relationships deepen. Their appreciation for small, ordinary moments intensifies. They'll tear up at sunsets, get emotional over music, feel gratitude for silence, not because they're fragile, but because they understand how rare peace really is. They don't want to be seen as victims, because survival required strength, not sympathy. Love, loyalty, and distance. Relationships are where the paradox becomes obvious. They're fiercely loyal. They'll show up at 3 a.m. without hesitation. But ask them to articulate their own needs? Suddenly unavailable. Suddenly busy. Because closeness once came with consequences. They crave connection, but their body braces for impact when it arrives. They learned independence as protection. Needing no one feels powerful, until you realize how lonely it can be. Adaptability as a superpower. One thing they're exceptionally good at? Change. New job? New city? Life imploding on a random Tuesday? They adapt, because instability was familiar long before adulthood. And then There's the humor. Dark humor. Not cruelty. Control. Laughing at pain removes its authority. Every joke becomes a rebellion against what tried to break them. Control in strange places. You'll notice something odd. They're relaxed about big uncertainties, but meticulous about small details. They can be calm about their future, yet stressed about choosing the right coffee mug. Why? Because they learned early that the big stuff often isn't controllable. So they manage what is. It's not contradiction. It's strategy. The grief beneath the strength. There's a quieter truth underneath all of this. Grief, not for someone else, but for themselves. They mourn the version that trusted easily, the version that didn't scan rooms, the version that laughed without checking safety first. They miss a softness they didn't get to keep, a childhood they didn't fully live, a freedom they only understood after it was gone. How do you explain missing a version of yourself you barely remember? That grief doesn't break them. It refines them. Why they cherish peace. They value calm because they know chaos intimately. They choose safe people because unsafe ones taught them pain. They move intentionally, not because they're afraid, but because they understand consequences. And that might be the real psychology here. People who've gone through too much don't just survive. They develop a layered, nuanced understanding of being human. They know strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about reassembling yourself, even when some pieces don't fit the same way anymore. The lighthouse effect. Not because their life was gentle, but because they remember the dark. So if you meet someone who laughs easily, adapts quickly, stays calm in chaos, and carries unexpected depth, know this: they've earned every ounce of that wisdom. They went through too much. And somehow, they're still here, still trying, still hoping. That's not just psychology. That's poetry in motion.